In the world of professional wrestling, injuries have always been one of the cruelest realities that anyone stepping into the ring must face. Every match carries risk, every bump has a cost, and every moment of glory comes with the possibility that it could all end in an instant. Some wrestlers fight through pain, recover, and return even stronger than before, but others are not given that chance. Their careers are cut short while they are still climbing, while their peak is still ahead of them, and before the audience ever gets to see their full potential. These are not just stories about missed matches or cancelled plans. They are stories about dreams interrupted, identities reshaped, and lives permanently changed. Today, we are looking at those journeys, counting them down from the more understandable endings to the ones that feel almost unbelievably tragic. Number 11, Jason Jordan. In the mid-2010s, WWE's tag team division in NXT was filled with incredible talent, but American Alpha stood out as one of the most promising teams of that era. Jason Jordan, alongside Chad Gable, combined athleticism, charisma, and chemistry in a way that made fans believe they were looking at the future of tag team wrestling. When the team split, Jordan seemed positioned for something even bigger. The storyline revealing him as Kurt Angle's son was not just a random twist. It was a clear signal that WWE had major plans for him. He was being placed into high-profile segments, paired with top stars like Seth Rollins, and slowly being built towards something much larger. But just as everything began to align, a serious neck injury stopped everything. At first, it seemed like a temporary setback. A few months turned into a year, and then into uncertainty. Eventually, doctors made the decision that changed everything. Jason Jordan would never be medically cleared to wrestle again. His in-ring career ended before he could fully step into the spotlight WWE had prepared for him. Still, he aimed in the business as a producer, showing that even when one chapter ends, another can begin, even if it is not the one he originally dreamed of. Number 10, Cory Graves. There are some wrestlers who have a presence that goes beyond wins and losses, and Cory Graves was one of them. Even early in his career, it was clear he had something unique. His look, his confidence, and his ability to connect with the audience made him stand out. WWE saw that potential too, placing him in meaningful matches in NXT and positioning him as someone who could eventually transition to the main roster. But then came the concussions. One serious head injury is dangerous enough, but repeated concussions in a short period of time are something entirely different. They do not just threaten a career. They threaten a person's long-term health and quality of life. After suffering multiple concussions, Graves was forced to make a decision no wrestler ever wants to face. He stepped away from in-ring competition while he still had so much left to give. However, unlike many others, he found a second life in wrestling almost immediately. Transitioning to commentary, he became one of the most recognizable voices in WWE. His sharp wit, natural charisma, and deep understanding of the business allowed him to thrive in a completely different role. Still, there is always that quiet question in the background. What could he have become if injuries had not forced him to stop? Number 9, Chris Nowinski. His story is one of the most unique on this list because while his wrestling career ended early, his impact on the world may have become even greater afterward. Chris Nowinski entered WWE through Tough Enough and quickly proved he was more than just a reality show contestant. He had intelligence, confidence, and a natural ability to play his role. His career was gaining momentum, and it seemed like he was on the path to something significant. Then came the injuries. Repeated blows to the head led to severe post-concussion symptoms, forcing him to retire far earlier than expected. But instead of stepping away from the conversation, Nowinski turned his attention to understanding the very thing that ended his career. He became deeply involved in concussion research, eventually becoming one of the leading voices in sports-related brain injury awareness. His work has helped change how athletes across multiple sports understand and handle head trauma. So while his time in the ring was short, his legacy extended far beyond it, protecting future generations in ways that may never fully be measured. Number 8, AJ Lee. In an era where the women's division was still finding its identity, AJ Lee stood out as something different. She was not just another performer. She brought personality, storytelling, and emotional depth to everything she did. Her presence helped bridge the gap between the Divas era and the women's revolution that followed. But just as that revolution was about to fully explode, AJ stepped away. While many factors played a role, one of the most important was her health. Years of wrestling had taken a toll on her body, especially her neck. The risk was no longer just about injuries that could heal. It was about the possibility of permanent damage. Walking away at that point was not just a career decision, it was a life decision. Even so, her influence never faded. She remained connected to wrestling through writing and creative work, and when she made a rare return appearance years later, it reminded everyone just how much she meant to that era. Her career may have ended early, but her impact continues to be felt. Number 7, Tyson Kidd. Whenever his name comes up, it is almost impossible not to feel a sense of what could have been. Tyson Kidd was one of the most technically skilled wrestlers of his generation, trained in the Hart family dungeon and carrying that legacy into WWE. For years, he hovered just below the level many believed he deserved. Then, finally, things started to click. He returned to prominence, found new momentum, and began to show glimpses of what he could truly become. And then, in one moment, everything changed. A severe neck injury during a match ended his career instantly. It was not just the loss of a wrestler. It was the loss of a future that had only just started to unfold. Thankfully, he survived and found a new role behind the scenes, contributing as a producer. But the abruptness of his ending makes his story one of the most difficult to accept. Number 6, Darren Drosdov. This is where the stories begin to shift from unfortunate to truly devastating. Darren Drozdov's career did not just end early. It was completely transformed by a single accident. During a match, a botched move resulted in a spinal injury that left him paralyzed. In one moment, everything changed. Wrestling was no longer the concern. Life itself became the challenge. What makes this story even more powerful is how Drozdov handled it. Despite everything, he remained connected to WWE, working as a writer and staying involved in the industry. His resilience became a story in itself. This was no longer about a career cut short. It was about a life redefined in the face of unimaginable adversity. Number 5, Magnum TA. Sometimes, an injury does not just change one person's life, it changes the direction of an entire industry. Magnum TA was on the verge of becoming one of the biggest stars in wrestling. He had the look, the charisma, and the connection with the audience needed to carry a company. Many believed he would become the face of his promotion and possibly reshape wrestling history. Then came the car accident. The injuries he suffered ended his career instantly. What makes this story so painful is not just what he lost, but what wrestling lost with him. His potential was not just great, it was transformative. And that is something that can never truly be replaced. Number 4, Richie Steamboat. Being the son of a legend comes with both opportunity and pressure, and Richie Steamboat carried both. He worked hard to prove he was more than just a name, building his own identity and showing real promise in developmental. Championships, strong performances, and steady growth made it clear that he was on the right path. But just as he approached the main roster, a serious back injury ended everything. Unlike some others, his story did not include a long run or major spotlight. It ended before it truly began. That is what makes it so difficult. It leaves behind a question that will never be answered. Number 3, Jamie Noble. His career was filled with personality, skill, and memorable moments, especially in the cruiserweight division. He proved himself as both an entertainer and a wrestler, earning respect inside and outside WWE. But injuries eventually caught up with him, forcing him to step away earlier than expected. While he transitioned into a backstage role and remained part of the business, the feeling remains that he still had more to give inside the ring. Number 2, Rick Rude. By the time his career ended, Rick Rude had already accomplished more than most wrestlers ever will. He was a top heel, a champion, and a performer who could command attention effortlessly. But even with all that success, his career still ended too soon. A back injury forced him to retire while he was still performing at a high level. What makes this even more tragic is how much he still had left to offer. He was not fading. He was still at the top. And then, suddenly, it was over. His later passing only adds another layer of sadness to a story that already feels incomplete. Number 1, Nikita Koloff. Ending on one of the strangest and most powerful stories, Nikita Koloff was once one of the most dominant and feared figures in wrestling. His presence, his intensity, and his connection to the audience made him a central figure of his era. But injuries forced him to step away at an age when most wrestlers are still building their legacy. What makes his story stand out is not just the early retirement, but how abruptly it happened. One moment he was a major force. The next, it was over. He later remained connected to wrestling in different ways, but the suddenness of his exit leaves behind a lasting sense of disbelief. These are the stories of wrestlers who were forced to walk away too soon. Some found new paths, some reshaped their lives entirely, and some left behind questions that will never be answered. But all of them share one thing in common. Their careers remind us that in professional wrestling, nothing is guaranteed. Every moment matters because you never know when it might be the last. But beyond the matches, the championships, and the spotlight, these stories also reveal something deeper about the people behind the characters. When the noise fades and the arenas go quiet, what remains is the reality of rebuilding a life after losing the one identity they spent years chasing. For some, that meant stepping into backstage roles, guiding the next generation and passing on everything they learned the hard way. For others, it meant completely stepping away, finding purpose outside the ring, and learning how to live without the adrenaline and passion that once defined them. It is not an easy transition. In many ways, it may be even harder than the physical pain itself. Yet, time and time again, these individuals proved that while their careers may have ended early, their stories did not. They adapted, they endured, and in their own way, they continued to fight. At the same time, their journeys serve as a powerful reminder of just how fragile greatness can be in this industry. One moment can change everything, turning a rising star into a what-if almost instantly. And that is why their legacies matter so much. Not just for what they achieved, but for what they represented during the time they had. Every performance, every risk, every sacrifice becomes more meaningful when viewed through that lens. These are not just stories of loss. They are stories of resilience, of unfinished brilliance, and of the human spirit refusing to be defined by a single moment of misfortune. And in that sense, even though their time in the ring ended too soon, their impact continues to echo far beyond it.